Mythological creatures, the griffin. In the annals of mythology, there are creatures born not from a single culture, but from the collective imagination of civilizations scattered across the ancient world. The griffin is one such beast. It is no accident that this creature endured for more than 5 millennia, taking root in Mesopotamia, Persia, Greece, and medieval Europe before spreading to every corner of the human imagination. To describe it is simple enough: the body of a lion, the wings and head of an eagle. But what it represented was far more complex. To look upon the griffin was to confront majesty and terror fused together. It was the embodiment of two kings, lion of the land, eagle of the sky, melded into a single guardian whose strength was unassailable and whose vision could pierce all deception. The griffin's story begins long before the poets of Greece ever inked its name. In Mesopotamia, cradle of civilization, artisans pressed tiny cylinder seals into clay, leaving behind images of eagle lions crouched in eternal vigilance. These seals date back to the 4th millennium before Christ, and even then, the griffin was not imagined as a passing fancy, but as a protector, a ward against evil, a divine sentinel. In Persia, the creature was called the Shurdal, the lion eagle. Sculpted into palatial walls and royal reliefs, it was a guardian of kings, keeping watch at the thresholds of empires. These early depictions reveal a truth: the griffin was never just a monster. It was a boundary marker, standing at the edge between the human world and the divine. By the time the Greeks absorbed the griffin into their mythological tapestry, it had already traveled far, evolving in form but never losing its essence. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described them as fierce guardians of gold. In the distant, frozen north, so the stories claimed, griffins watched over mountains rich with treasure. Any who dared approach were met with hooked beaks, clawed talons, and a predator's unrelenting fury. Dragons themselves were said to shun the griffins, unwilling to provoke their wrath. To ancient miners and storytellers, this was more than allegory. Fossil hunters in the Scythian steppes uncovered the remains of strange beasts, beaked skulls with sharp teeth, crouched as if frozen mid-guard. These were the fossils of Protoceratops, dinosaurs long extinct, but to ancient eyes, they were proof that griffins were real, creatures of bone and earth, guarding the riches buried deep beneath the soil. The griffin's association with gold is no accident. In every age, gold has been humanity's obsession, a symbol of divine power and earthly wealth. And what better guardian for such a prize than a creature that combined the terror of the wild with the vigilance of the heavens? In myth, the griffin became inseparable from Apollo, god of prophecy, reason, and light. It was said that griffins drew his chariot across the sky, their wings beating like thunder as they carried the sun god's radiance. In this role, they were not only guardians of treasure, but guardians of truth, defenders of divine order against chaos. When the Middle Ages dawned, the griffin was reborn again. Christian scribes, compiling bestiaries, treated the creature not as myth, but as moral allegory. The lion's body represented strength, courage, and earthly dominion. The eagle's head and wings stood for divinity, resurrection, and heavenly wisdom. Together, the griffin symbolized Christ himself, human and divine in one being. To see a griffin painted in a manuscript was to be reminded of vigilance against sin, the unbreakable watch of the Savior over his flock. But the griffin was not confined to the pages of monks. It spread across the heraldic banners of Europe. Families, kings, and cities adopted the creature as a crest, declaring to their enemies that they too possessed the vigilance of the eagle and the might of the lion. A griffin rampant, claws raised and wings outstretched, was both a warning and a promise. On castle gates, griffins were carved into stone, guardians even in effigy, watching over lords and peasants alike. No other hybrid held such enduring authority, and no other beast so effortlessly bridged the gap between cultures as diverse as Persia, Greece, and Christendom. Yet the griffin was more than a guardian. It was a paradox, embodying the tension between nobility and savagery, protection and destruction. Legends describe griffins as loyal to the gods, just and noble to the worthy, but merciless to thieves and liars. They were incorruptible. Their eyes, it was said, could pierce the soul, discerning truth from falsehood. They guarded not only gold, but sanctity itself. A man could not bribe a griffin, nor deceive it. To face one was to have one's soul weighed. Across cultures, the griffin adapted, shifting form but never meaning. In Persia, it remained the Shirdal. In India, a similar beast called the Sharabha was said to be mightier than lions or elephants, a creature even capable of defeating lions themselves. In China, the idea of a bird lion blurred into the great tapestry of dragons and phoenixes, symbols of cosmic guardianship. Wherever it appeared, the griffin was not a wild beast but an enforcer of order, a protector of thresholds. Art immortalized it. In Dante's Divine Comedy, a griffin draws the chariot of Beatrice in the Garden of Eden, a symbol of Christ's triumph. In Renaissance art, the griffin appeared as a motif of wisdom, knowledge, and power. To scholars, it was not just myth. It was a creature that embodied the human yearning for balance, a reminder that we long to merge strength and vision into one. And even today, the griffin refuses to fade. In fantasy literature, in role-playing games, in films and modern heraldry, the griffin is reborn yet again. It is the noble mount of warriors in games like World of Warcraft, the proud protector in novels, the emblem of institutions that wish to borrow its authority. Its image still clings to us because it is not just a beast, it is an archetype, the union of land and sky, the embodiment of vision, vigilance, and strength. From Mesopotamian clay to medieval manuscripts, from Apollo's chariot to the banners of knights, the griffin has never been a relic of a single time or place. It is a creature that humanity has carried with it, reshaped and reimagined, but always revered. It remains what it always was, a sentinel at the boundaries of the known and the unknown, a guardian at the gates of treasure and truth, a creature that demands both awe and fear. The griffin endures because it represents something we have never stopped desiring, the fusion of earth and heaven, power and wisdom, strength and sight. A beast that is not merely myth, but a mirror of our deepest longing for protection, majesty, and the eternal watch of a guardian who never sleeps. Mythological creatures. The phoenix. In every culture, in every age, humanity has sought a symbol for hope beyond death, something that could speak to us of renewal, of transformation, of the power to rise when all seems lost. Out of this need was born the phoenix, the immortal firebird, a creature of such majesty and wonder that it has never left our imagination. Its story is one of flames and ashes, of endings that are never final, and of beginnings that always return. The phoenix is more than myth. It is the embodiment of our deepest yearning, that nothing, not even death itself, can hold us forever. The tale of the phoenix begins in the deserts of Egypt, where the Bennu bird took its place among the gods. The Bennu was a great heron-like creature, radiant in plumage, associated with the sun god Ra and the god of creation, Atum. Each morning it rose with the sun, its cry echoing across the Nile, heralding the dawn of a new day. Egyptians saw in the Bennu the very rhythm of the universe. Creation, death, and rebirth. The bird perched upon sacred stones, forever linked with the cycles of time, and its presence became inseparable from the idea of eternal life. When the Greeks later learned of this bird, they shaped it into something even grander. The phoenix, the bird that dies in fire and rises again from its own ashes. In Greek tradition, the phoenix lived for centuries, 500 years, 1,000, some said even more. When its time approached, the bird did not wither or decay as mortals do. Instead, it gathered myrrh, cinnamon, and rare spices to build its nest. With a cry that shook the heavens, it set itself aflame. Fire consumed both nest and bird until nothing remained but ash. And from that ash, reborn, a new phoenix rose, majestic, immortal, unbroken. Herodotus wrote of it as a marvel, seen only once in lifetimes. To witness a phoenix was to behold eternity itself. The Romans took the phoenix into their own mythology, stamping its image onto coins, carvings, and monuments. For them, it became more than a myth. It was an emblem of empire. Rome, they declared, would rise as the phoenix did. No matter how many times it fell, no matter how many enemies pressed against it, Rome would endure, eternal as the firebird. In this way, the phoenix became a political promise, a divine stamp of permanence on a world built from conquest and ruin. When Christianity spread, the phoenix took on a new role. Early Christians saw in the bird a perfect metaphor for resurrection. Just as the phoenix perished and rose again, so too did Christ conquer death and return in glory. Churches painted the phoenix in manuscripts, soaring in golden flames, a sign of eternal life to believers who faced persecution and martyrdom. To them, it was not simply a mythological bird, it was proof that faith transcends the grave. Yet the phoenix was not confined to Egypt, Greece, or Rome. In Persia, the simurgh carried much the same spirit. It was a vast bird of wisdom and healing, dwelling at the top of the tree of knowledge, its wings spanning the horizon. To see the simurgh was to be blessed. To hear its voice was to be transformed. In China, the fenghuang reigned alongside the dragon, embodying yin and yang, harmony and balance. Where the dragon stood for power and strength, the fenghuang embodied peace and prosperity. Though different in detail, these birds carried the same message: renewal, balance, and the eternal turning of time. Legends of the phoenix are rich with detail. Its feathers, they say, were red as flame, gold as the sun, radiant as dawn itself. Its tears could heal any wound. Its song was so pure that even the fiercest storms would calm to listen. And when it burned, it did not scream in agony. It sang, a cry of transformation, a hymn to eternity, a note so piercing it echoed through the ages. To see the phoenix die was to see the end of all things. To see it rise again was to see hope reborn. The symbolism of the phoenix reached into every corner of thought. Alchemists saw it as the perfect emblem of transformation, fire purifying matter, turning the corrupt into the pure. Poets and philosophers embraced it as the soul's triumph over decay. To medieval minds, the phoenix was proof that death was not annihilation, but passage. The bird's cycle was not just physical, it was spiritual, a reflection of the eternal truths they believed guided the universe. Even in modern times, the phoenix refuses to fade. It rises again in novels, in films, in comics and songs. Jean Grey becomes the phoenix in Marvel's X-Men, her power reborn in flame. Harry Potter witnesses the tears of Fawkes, the phoenix, heal mortal wounds. Cities destroyed by fire call themselves phoenix as they rebuild, taking the bird as their patron of resilience. In every tragedy, in every ruin, we return to the same symbol. Out of ashes, something stronger can rise. What makes the phoenix so enduring is not simply its beauty or its fire, but what it represents to us. It tells us that destruction is not the end, that ruin can lead to renewal, that even in our darkest hour we may yet find light. The phoenix is hope set alight, hope feathered and soaring, hope that cannot be killed. It is the voice that whispers to civilizations and to individuals alike. Fall, burn, crumble if you must, but from those ashes, rise again. The phoenix is eternal because the human spirit is eternal. We cling to it because we need it. We tell its story because it tells ours. As long as we yearn for a tomorrow after today's ruin, as long as we believe that what has been broken can be remade, the phoenix will rise in our minds, in our myths, in our very souls. From Egypt to Greece, from Rome to today, its fire has never gone out. And so long as humanity draws breath, it never will. The Minotaur, deep in the heart of Crete beneath the shining palaces of King Minos, there lay a place unlike any other, a labyrinth so vast, so winding, so merciless in its design, that once you entered you would never find your way back out. Within those walls lived a creature both feared and pitied, a beast born of divine punishment and human pride. It was neither holy man nor holy bull, but something trapped between. This was the Minotaur, a monster that fed not only on human flesh. The story of the Minotaur begins with a bargain. From the waves, Poseidon sent a magnificent bull, white as foam, strong as the tide itself. The gift was meant for sacrifice, a tribute back to the god who had given it. But Minos, blinded by desire, could not bring himself to part with the animal. And so Poseidon's anger fell not upon Minos directly, but upon his household. She was consumed by desire for the sacred bull, a passion unnatural and cruel. From that cursed union came the Minotaur, an abomination, part man, part bull, the living reminder of Minos's betrayal. Ashamed and horrified, Minos could not bring himself to kill the child, nor could he let it live freely. He turned to Daedalus, the greatest craftsman of his age, and demanded a prison that could never be escaped. Daedalus conceived the labyrinth, a maze of twisting corridors and endless passages, each turn leading deeper into confusion. It was said that even Daedalus himself, who had built it, could not escape without aid. Into this dark cage the Minotaur was cast, hidden from the world, condemned to wander its stone passages forever. But a creature must eat, and here lay the horror that fell upon Athens. Years before, Athens had been defeated by Crete in war, forced to bow to Minos's rule. As punishment, Athens was ordered to pay a tribute every 9 years. 7 young men and 7 maidens, chosen by lot, sent across the sea to Crete. There they were led into the labyrinth, abandoned to its twisting passages and left to the hunger of the Minotaur. None returned. The wails of mothers losing children, the cries of youths taken from their homes, echoed across Athens every cycle. And within the labyrinth, the Minotaur gorged, its hunger unending, its rage insatiable. It is here that the story of Theseus begins. Prince of Athens, he could not bear to watch his city suffer. He volunteered to be among the tributes, not as a victim, but as a savior. To Crete he sailed, carrying not only his courage but the hopes of every family that had lost a child to the monster. Minos's daughter Ariadne, stricken with love for the prince, gave him a gift, a ball of thread. "Unwind it as you go," she told him. Theseus entered the labyrinth with the others, but while they wandered in terror, he pressed forward with purpose, the thread trailing behind him. In the heart of the maze he found it, the Minotaur, towering, horns gleaming, half man, half beast, its breath thick with the stench of blood. The fight that followed has been told in 100 ways. Some say he fought barehanded, grappling with the beast until he broke its neck. Others say he struck with a sword, piercing the monster's throat. However it happened, when the struggle was done, the Minotaur lay dead, and Theseus followed his thread back to freedom. The death of the Minotaur freed Athens from its tribute, but the story does not end so cleanly. Theseus would abandon Ariadne on the island of Naxos, a betrayal as cruel as the curse that had created the Minotaur itself. Minos, humiliated, would rage against Daedalus, imprisoning him until the craftsman and his son Icarus built wings to escape. And the labyrinth itself remained, its twisting passages a symbol of human pride and divine punishment, a prison that held not just a beast, but a lesson. The Minotaur's story is not merely one of a monster slain. Born of greed and hubris, trapped by shame, the Minotaur becomes less a villain and more a victim of circumstance. He did not ask to be created. He did not ask to be locked away in darkness. Some later writers, like Borges in The House of Asterion, reimagined him not as a mindless killer, but as a lonely, tragic figure, wandering the labyrinth, waiting for the mercy of death at the hands of a hero. To them, he was not evil, but exiled, an outcast whose very existence was suffering. Artists like Picasso returned to the Minotaur again and again, using it as a symbol of brutality, violence, lust, and power. To modern minds, the Minotaur is more than a beast in a maze. The labyrinth is our own mind, twisting and confusing, hiding within it the things we fear most. And the thread, the simple ball of twine given to Theseus, is reason, cunning, the fragile lifeline that lets us navigate the chaos of life and confront the monsters within. Even today, the Minotaur lives on. In fantasy worlds, it is reimagined as a warrior race, horned and muscular, wielding axes in battle. In literature, it stands as metaphor. In psychology, it represents the shadow self, the part of us that lurks in the dark corners of our minds, waiting. The Minotaur endures because we still need it. So when you hear of the Minotaur, do not think only of a beast slain by a hero. Think of a child born of pride and punishment, trapped in a prison not of his own making, condemned to violence, waiting for release. Think of the labyrinth, that endless twisting of fate and choice that we all must navigate. And think of the thread, that fragile line of hope, that allows us, even in the darkest maze, to find our way back to the light. Mythological creatures, the basilisk, in the long, winding corridors of European legend, among tales of dragons, demons, and beasts of nightmare, one creature stands apart. Not because of its size, nor its strength, but because of the sheer terror it inspired. It did not need fire, or claws, or wings to kill. It needed only a glance. This was the basilisk, called the King of Serpents, the Death Gazer, a creature so feared that its very presence turned men to stone, withered plants, and left the earth scorched and lifeless in its wake. The basilisk's story is one of strangeness from the very beginning. Unlike most beasts of myth, it was not said to come from gods or heroes, but from an accident of nature. According to medieval lore, a basilisk was born from an egg laid by a rooster and hatched by a toad or serpent. Out of this unholy mixture came a monster that combined the arrogance of the cock, the venom of the serpent, and the corruption of a toad. In some stories, it was described as a great snake, gleaming and scaled, its eyes burning with death. In others, it bore the crown-like crest of a rooster upon its head, a mocking parody of royalty. However it was imagined, one thing remained constant. No mortal could meet its gaze and live. Writers as early as Pliny the Elder, the Roman naturalist of the 1st century, recorded accounts of the basilisk. He described it as a serpent from the deserts of Africa, only a foot long, but so venomous that it left a trail of death wherever it slithered. Its very breath scorched the ground, its glance split rocks, and all creatures fled before it. Pliny wrote that the basilisk was so deadly that even lances and spears were useless, for the poison of its touch would travel back up the weapon to kill the man who struck it. To the Romans, this was not merely a beast of fantasy, but an echo of nature's most dangerous truths. The lethal speed of vipers, the toxic bite of asps, the uncanny ability of snakes to kill silently and swiftly. Through the Middle Ages, the basilisk grew in legend. Bestiaries painted it not only as a killer, but as a moral lesson. Its birth from corruption symbolized sin, the unnatural union of arrogance and vice. Its power to kill with a look became a warning of pride, that a man who exalted himself above others, like the rooster crowing at dawn, could poison everything around him. Clerics preached that only the pure could face a basilisk, just as only the pure could face sin. And yet, the basilisk was not invincible. Even in legend, there was balance. Nature, it was said, always produced its own antidote. The only creature that could withstand a basilisk's gaze was the humble weasel. Small, quick, unassuming, the weasel was immune to its venom. To slay a basilisk, villagers would seal a weasel in its den, and the tiny creature would bring down the Serpent King where men could not. Another defense was the mirror, for if the basilisk's power lay in its deadly eyes, then the surest way to kill it was to force it to look upon itself. To meet its own gaze was to die by its own weapon. Many a tale speaks of knights carrying polished shields, forcing the monster to see its own reflection and watching it wither into nothing. The basilisk became so feared in medieval Europe that entire towns claimed to be haunted by one. In Warsaw, legend tells of a basilisk that lived in the cellars of an abandoned house, turning all who entered to stone. Brave men tried to slay it, but none returned. At last, a clever man descended with a mirror, tricking the beast into gazing upon itself. The creature's name itself carried power. Basiliskos in Greek meant little king, a mocking title for a beast crowned with death. To call it the king of serpents was not mere poetry. It was an acknowledgement of its dominion. A creature that ruled not with size, but with fear. Unlike dragons, which could be fought with swords and courage, the basilisk demanded cunning. Its very existence was a challenge. How do you slay what kills by being seen? Yet as with all myths, there is a seed of reality beneath the fantasy. The basilisk may have been inspired by the cobra, with its crown-like hood and deadly venom. Travelers' tales of serpents that could kill with a glance may have been exaggerations of how quickly venom spread. The rooster's involvement likely came from ancient beliefs about strange omens and unnatural births. When animals acted against their kind, people believed it heralded disaster. Over time, these fragments fused into the legend of a creature too deadly to face. But the basilisk was more than just a nightmare. It was a reflection of the human fear of corruption, of hidden death, of the unseen dangers lurking in ordinary places. Its birth was a mockery of order, its powers a warning of pride, its weakness a lesson in humility. That sometimes it is not the warrior or the king who prevails, but the smallest, most overlooked creature of all. Even in modern times, the basilisk slithers through our imagination. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, it returns as a monstrous serpent hidden beneath a school, killing with its eyes and leaving students petrified. In fantasy games, novels, and films, it remains a beast of dread, the ultimate test of courage and wit. To see it is still to fear it. To face it is still to wonder whether one glance could be the last. And so the basilisk remains what it always was, a creature that rules by fear, a serpent crowned in terror, a monster that can kill with nothing more than sight. It is the nightmare that whispers to us that sometimes the most dangerous things are not the largest, not the loudest, not the fiercest, but the ones we cannot face directly, the ones that make us look away, lest their gaze consumes us. The basilisk is eternal because the fear it embodies is eternal. It is the dread of unseen death, the corruption that spreads from pride, the lethal glance that turns life into stone. and as long as mankind fears what cannot be fought with sword or fire, the basilisk will slither on, crowned forever as the king of serpents. Mythological creatures, Cerberus. At the edge of the world, where the living dare not tread, there lies a gate. It is not a gate of wood, nor of iron, but the blackened threshold of Hades itself, the entrance to the underworld, the land of shades and silence. And there, forever chained to its master, stands a beast born of terror and shadow, Cerberus, the hound of Hades, the three-headed guardian whose very presence tells mortals that there is no return from the land of the dead. Cerberus was not merely a dog. In Greek myth, he was a creature bred from monstrosity itself. His parents were Typhon and Echidna, two primordial horrors who spawned many of the great terrors of myth, the Hydra, the Chimera, and others whose names still make the skin crawl. From such a lineage came Cerberus, a beast who embodied not just animal ferocity, but cosmic dread. Writers describe him with three heads, sometimes with a mane of snakes writhing about his neck, sometimes with the tail of a serpent or the claws of a lion. His form shifted with the storyteller, but one thing never changed. He was the sentinel at the gates of Hades, and no soul could pass him without leave of the gods. The three heads of Cerberus were more than a grotesque flourish. To the Greeks, they symbolized the past, the present, and the future, time itself gnashing its teeth at all who dared approach. Other traditions claim they stood for birth, life, and death, the inescapable stages of existence. To see Cerberus was to see that death is not just an ending, but the culmination of all time, all memory, all existence. He was not just a dog with three faces. He was the very embodiment of mortality itself, snarling at the edge of eternity. Poets wrote of him with awe and dread. Hesiod in the Theogony described Cerberus as brazen-voiced, with 50 heads, an exaggeration that spoke to the impossibility of overcoming him. Later, the number solidified into 3, a form that captured the balance of symbolism and terror. Virgil, in his Aeneid, placed him at the gates of the underworld, where the hero Aeneas pacified him with honey-soaked, drugged cakes so that he could descend and meet the shade of his father. Orpheus, the legendary musician, soothed him with his lyre, playing so sweetly that even the hound of death lay down in peace. Theseus, in some accounts, was dragged to the underworld in chains, only to encounter the beast as a prisoner. And of course, Heracles, Hercules to the Romans, was tasked with bringing Cerberus to the surface as one of his 12 labors. It was the final test, the most impossible of challenges, to wrestle Death's guardian itself and drag it into the world of the living. Heracles, armed not with sword or club, but with his sheer strength, grappled the beast, subdued it, and carried it to King Eurystheus. The king, terrified at the sight, begged Heracles to return it to Hades at once. Even among gods and heroes, Cerberus was too terrible to keep. What makes Cerberus so enduring is that he is more than just a monster to be fought. He is the boundary itself. Dragons might guard treasure. Griffins might defend the sun god's chariot. But Cerberus guards the most impenetrable treasure of all, the line between life and death. His snarling, slavering jaws remind us that death is not something to be cheated or escaped lightly. To the Greeks, the fact that Heracles and Orpheus managed to pass him did not make the beast weak. It made those heroes unique, their feats remarkable precisely because they overcame the insurmountable. For ordinary mortals, Cerberus remained unyielding. In art, Cerberus appeared carved into vases, painted on walls, a constant reminder of what waited beyond life's horizon. He was never beautiful, never noble. He was terror personified, a beast whose 3 mouths could tear apart even the most courageous warrior. And yet, he was not evil. Cerberus did not hunt the living. He did not prowl the earth in search of prey. His duty was singular, keep the dead where they belonged, and bar the living from crossing the threshold. In this way, he was less a villain than a servant of cosmic order. Without him, the underworld would spill into chaos. With him, the balance of existence remained intact. When the myths traveled forward into Roman culture, Cerberus remained firmly at the gates. Virgil gave him his honeycakes, Ovid gave him serpentine details, and later Christian thinkers reshaped him into a symbol of hell itself. Dante, in his Inferno, placed Cerberus in the third circle of hell, where he gnawed and clawed at the damned souls of gluttons, a grotesque extension of hunger that could never be satisfied. His three mouths, in Dante's hands, became allegories of excess, punishment for those who could not control their appetites. Even in modern times, the image of Cerberus has not lost its bite. He prowls through literature, films, and games as the ultimate guardian, the final boss at the threshold of danger. In fantasy role-playing, he stands as the beast no adventurer dares to face, unprepared. In popular culture, from Harry Potter's three-headed dog, Fluffy, to endless retellings in video games and novels, Cerberus has been reshaped but never diminished. He is still the snarling face of death's frontier, still the hound that waits in darkness, still the reminder that the greatest gates in existence are guarded not by locks but by terror itself. And perhaps that is why Cerberus endures. He is not merely a mythic beast, he is a concept, a living embodiment of the barrier that separates what we know from what lies beyond. His eyes blaze with the inevitability of death. His teeth grind with the certainty that all mortals, no matter how mighty, will one day face the same gate. Heroes may pass him, trick him, or overpower him for a time. But for the rest of us, Cerberus remains forever at his post. The hound of Hades does not sleep. He does not tire. He waits, patient as eternity itself. And when the time comes, he will be there, at the threshold, his three heads raised, his breath hot with the chill of the grave, to greet each soul that dares approach the land from which there is no return.